up and smoke me when I die. And if anyone don't like it, just look 'em in the eye.
You're listening to The Mark Cox Show. Find everything Mark Cox at 971talk.com/Cox.
Well, there's no doubt of how Willie Nelson will be celebrating the inauguration tomorrow, is there? I'm just saying.
I think that's how he celebrates every day.
I think that's how Willie celebrates daybreak and maybe nightfall and everything in between.
And lunch.
You have to wonder, don't you? You do have to wonder. So back to the story I mentioned a minute ago. If you've lived in North County, driven through North County, gone up Lindbergh, you know where Jamestown Mall is. I think my sister-in-law used to work there years ago. I know my in-laws shopped up there a lot, but it's been vacant for a while. And there's been a lot of talk about tearing it down and replacing it with something else. And these talks have been underway for a long time. And the question is, how is that going to happen? Now there's been a dispute in the county council with one of the newer council members trying to wrest control from the Land Clearance Redevelopment Authority and give it back to county council. We're joined by St. Louis County Executive Steve Stenger right now. Steve, how are you, sir?
I'm doing really well, Mark. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I just wanted to kind of clear up in people's mind what's going on with Jamestown Mall. Your administration and maybe the previous administrations as well have been trying to get this property redeveloped for a while.
Yeah. I when I first started, January 1, 2015, knowing exactly what you're talking about when you talk about driving past Jamestown Mall and having driven past it myself, having visited the site. It's unsightly, it's dangerous, there are environmental hazards, and it needs to be returned to productive use for our whole community, including North County. So I began to take steps immediately, and one of the first things we did is we started buying the properties at very low prices in an effort to consolidate all of the ownership into one owner, which would be the LCRA, which is Land Clearance Authority, because that's the entity that handles land clearance and handles acquisitions of property. And there are many reasons for that, and I can talk about some of those. But we wanted to make sure that the ownership was consolidated in one appropriate entity, so then we could begin that returning process, returning the property to our tax rolls and returning the property to a productive use.
So we're close, maybe within sight of a plan to redevelop the property. And County Council member Rochelle Walton Gray, who just got elected to the council, sponsored a bill that would effectively pull that property back away from the Land Clearance Redevelopment Authority and land it into County Council's responsibility, correct? What's wrong with that?
Well, the problem is that by the charter, the council and even the county executive, we each are from different branches, and each branch has a separation of powers, and neither of our branches, even put together, can do what the Land Clearance Authority can do. So effectively what happens, and particularly in this case, the bill just calls for it to be basically turned over to the county council, multiple things happen. One, the council doesn't have the powers necessary under the law to effectuate what needs to happen for redevelopment. And what happens is there's no funding at that level, at the county council level, whereas there's funding through the LCRA to get things done. And what happens is it exposes the county to all kinds of liabilities that the county doesn't want to be exposed to, which is why the appropriate entity to handle this transaction is the LCRA. Things like environmental hazards and environmental liabilities, legal liabilities. So should somebody be hurt on the property, maintaining insurance and handling those types of issues. So it's not, that's why, development is not typically something that St. Louis County gets involved in. We want to stay away from that, and that's why we have these entities that are empowered by law, by state law, to handle these transactions properly.
Yeah, I'm not saying this would happen, but if it ended up the county council had responsibility for this, politics come into play. Who gets to develop it?
That's a great point.
Yeah.
That's a great point. And that's exactly why you want it to be a separate entity. It just gives us another layer of insulation so those kinds of things don't creep their way into into what will otherwise be, really a great transaction for the entire county. And it's something that we had built a lot of momentum on. I had gone to New York to try to negotiate with the landowners, and it was only after we were unable to negotiate that we actually started to make the purchases, because we wanted to exhaust all of the, more simple conservative means. And, we took the steps of buying the properties. We're negotiating. We have ongoing negotiations, and those negotiations were going very well and have gone well and have resulted in saving, I would estimate, in saving taxpayers millions of dollars, because we were able to acquire the properties at low prices. But when we have complexities introduced into this process like this bill, things start taking longer. They become more complex. The transactions become more expensive because there may be litigation and there may be holdups in the process. And heck, landowners may try to drive harder bargains and higher prices. So we're trying to avoid all that, and we really want to just move this forward, really for our whole county. We want to move it forward for the good people in North County. They deserve this. They're sitting there with with something that's unsightly, dangerous, and frankly, it's a hazard. I mean, it's just sitting there. Nothing can happen with it unless we move it forward, and that's what we want to do. We want to move this thing forward.
Well, we're talking to County Executive Steve Stenger. So Rochelle Walton Gray, the councilwoman, managed to get this substitute bill perfected, not to talk Greek to people that may not understand what that means, but with one more vote, this thing could go into effect, correct? What do you do to change that?
It could. I can't really speculate whether that's something that would make final passage or not.
Okay.
I think what the council people who voted for the bill for the at this point for the perfection was really just to get it on the docket so that conversations could be had and so that they could learn more about it.
Okay.
And I think they're learning more about it, and I'm pretty confident that if they understand exactly what's going on, that it won't finally pass. Because if it does finally pass, it effectively kills the project, and we just cannot have that for North County. We can't have it for our whole county. We want to move this forward, and we really want to return it to productive use and get it on the tax rolls.
What are you hoping to see on that spot?
I want to see something that certainly generates tax dollars for the community. I want to see something that is useful for the community. I want to see something that is really just a wonderful development. We've got developments, repurposing of malls that's really going to be it's occurring now, and it's happening all over the county. We see all these stories of malls failing, and typically what you need to have are mixed uses, retail, commercial. Mixed with maybe even in this case some residential, market rate residential, nice homes, and sort of a town center type feel I think would be appropriate and nice. But once again, we're going to get tons of public input. We want everyone's opinion on this. I want the council person's opinion on this. I want all of the council to comment on this. I would like to comment on it. And I think, if we come together, we can really come up with a solution here for our community and for our county that's great for everyone. And that's what I'm offering. I really want to have a meeting of the minds and get together and get this thing resolved.
County Executive Steve Stenger, I appreciate you giving us some time this afternoon.
Well, I appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Yep. Take care of yourself. Appreciate it. Yep. See you now. I wanted to get that out there because I read the story in the Post, and there's several layers of this. Rochelle Walton Gray just took over from Omar, I think, and represents that area and has some different ideas about how this is to be handled. But the county went out and got a legal opinion on this that it's not the proper way to handle it. So they could vote on this again next week. Just so you know, if it affects you, if you've got an opinion on it, be sure you let your county council person know about it and get your voice heard. How about that? Let me get to